Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily podcast. Now today I'm joined by Marna Ricker. She's the Global Vice Chair of Tax at EY. And we're going to discuss how AI and generative AI is already reshaping the landscape for tax professionals. And we're not just talking about the future, we're going to share real-world stories today of the impact that this technology is having on operations around the world. And as we move through an era where data is king, I also want to uncover how initiatives like EY Tax Copilot is not just innovative, but also paving the way for a new approach in the tax domain. And yes, it's all about working smarter, not harder. So Marna is going to share her insights on the importance of a human-centered approach to adopting these technologies and emphasizing things like training, change management, and leadership that includes everyone. Delivering daily content to 140,000 of you wonderful monthly listeners across the globe is no small feat. I don't want to take all the credit here because it wouldn't be possible without the backing of our dedicated sponsors and partners. And I also want to shine a light on the fact that legacy managed file transfer tools are looking dated. They often lack the security that today's remote workforce demands. And companies that continue relying on that outdated tech, they're in danger of putting their sensitive data at risk. Attention IT professionals, are you tired of juggling these multiple servers for secure file sharing? Integrated shared folders and email plus a comprehensive REST API. Kiteworks simplifies your workflow. For administrators, you can experience unmatched functionality and integration that traditional MFT servers just can't touch. Step into the future of secure managed file transfer with Kiteworks by going to kiteworks.com to get started. That's kiteworks.com. And remember, Kiteworks is also FedRAMP moderate authorized. Thank you for your patience today. This is the moment you've been waiting for. It's time to welcome my guest onto the show. This is one of those episodes that has it all. So please buckle up and hold on tight because I'm going to beam your ears all the way to the US where my guest is waiting to join me today. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Marna. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thank you for having me, Neil. I appreciate it. I am the Global Vice Chair of Tax for EY, and I have the privilege of overseeing all aspects of our strategy, its offerings, our client service, and for the tax service line. And I get the pleasure of working with 76,000 plus people and bringing, our combined revenues of around 11 billion worldwide to the forefront every year in our delivering our financial results. So it's an awesome team of tax, law, and people advisory service professionals, and really a connected landscape of tax disciplines. And our ambition and mission is to help organizations obviously navigate an extraordinary area of an ever-changing tax landscape. So, and to do that, frankly, in a really dynamic technology and AI, world that we're all living in. So, I get to lead a tax executive committee, and I sit on our highest ranking body at EY, which is our global executive committee. So, I'm also personally, I have a passion around junior achievement and financial literacy. And then I also sit on the Dean's Advisory Council for my alma mater, which is Ohio State at the Fisher College of Business. So those are the things I love to do in my sort of charitable giving in my free time. And then I have two boys, two very active boys, and an awesome husband, and enjoy just being outside on the lake. We were just talking about the water and the weather, and I live in the great state of Minnesota. That's who I am and what I get to do personally and professionally.
Absolutely love that, and I think, when we're talking about things like tax and financial literacy, it can be quite a dry subject, but your passion for this really shines through in your intro alone there. Is it something that's always been with you?
It has. Ironically, I'm an accounting and finance, by background and in college, and then went to law school. And my first year, I was like, I don't know about this, right? And then I got to take my first tax class, and I really fell in love with it. So, it was a combination of the law and the numbers. And so, that's really, I think, what drew me to it. And then this sort of, representation, taxation without representation, right? You sort of go to all that and the social good that comes from tax. And I just think the love of the law and the numbers is what created passion. It's ever changing. I love the challenge of change. So it's just been a great career. It's really fun to help, obviously, tax administrations issue great policy. And then also to obviously work with corporations on, how they obviously are are focused on contributing to great compliance, and then obviously helping their organizations, make really good, solid capital decisions, and contribute to the growth of the business. So anyway, I do have a passion on it on both sides.
And that's one of the reasons I was excited to have you on the podcast today, because every single day I'd take a different area of business or our life, our world, or technology, and try and demystify or understand how technology is solving real world problems. So when we talk about financial literacy and tax and EY, I don't think we automatically assume AI. AI is almost a separate conversation at the moment. There's a lot of excitement, a lot of hype, but also a lot of confusion about, well, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for my business? What problems are we solving? What business value are we generating? So I've got to ask, as someone that's got such a great vantage point, you were talking about the team of 76,000 people there. How do you see something like generative AI and other emerging technologies reshaping that landscape for tax professionals? And are there any pitfalls that they should be aware of before diving headfirst into this transformation?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, I really, at the end of the day, the tax department, right, and tax overall, whether that's on the administration side or certainly on the corporate side, data, it's the lowest level. If you think about it, right, you're talking about ultimately taxing, the lowest level transactional data. And so that is the heart where you apply AI, generative AI in particular. And so all the things you do around data. So it's really a game changer from a tax administration perspective and certainly a corporate perspective. And so there is so much we're doing already around applying generative AI to data. So if you think about it, just think about how much more data that we're doing than even just a decade ago. 50 times more data we have, and that amount is supposed to double over the next 18 months by the end of 2025. So if you think about a typical tax department, just to give you perspective, we have our CFR, we do a tax finance and operate survey every year, and we estimate between 40 and 70% of the tax department's time is spent on just manipulating and gathering data. So think about the ability to apply generative AI to that. And we're seeing, even you've had to think about things like Microsoft Copilot. We're seeing basic productivity gains on the use of Copilot up to 10 to 14 hours a week. So, just think about that. Now, you asked me a question about pitfalls. So you talked about pitfalls, in particular, and what does that look like? And, what do you want to be thinking about that? And so, you really need to understand what use cases, like what do you really want to be applying, the technology to? And so, you can start with really simple things like, again, just simple processes that you want to apply it to. But you just want to jump in. You want to get in there and you want to make sure you're training your people on how to use the tools and start with some really simple things. So, you want to get in the game might be the way I'd say it.
And another thing that I've been reading a lot about, and as I said, each day I like to try and demystify a particular area or shine a light on a topic, and that is the technology trap. So just to bring that to life, can you share an example of how a technology trap that tax professionals might fall into, get distracted by that shiny new technology, they fall into this trap, and also how they can avoid it?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Like I said, I think that's, embracing it would be number one. And, it could be in your personal life, if you want to learn, certainly. And, but professionally, I think the number one thing you're going to want to do is just jump in and start to explore new technologies. Otherwise you're going to fall behind, right? I think that's a really, really important thing. I think second, is you're going to want to have a strategic evaluation of what you want to use. And so it's interesting. There's a stat out there in one of the CEO surveys we did. 99% of CEOs are planning to invest in generative AI, but only two-thirds actually admit to not having, a perfect path or a right path. And so, that's kind of going to be the iterative process around generative AI. And so for tax professionals, from my perspective, is like I said, I'd start with something simpler, something easy, a simple process that you're going through. And like I said, I generally would do that around data. You're going to want to be very collaborative with your CIO and your CTO, right? Your obviously technology piece of your organization, and making sure you're aligned with the wider organizational technology strategy. So third, from my perspective, is that data. I can't say that enough, right? I mean, that is really the heart of what tax departments are focused on. And so you're going to want to make sure you're standardizing your data, you're cleansing your data, you've got great data that you can start to work with. And we're seeing that a lot on the tax administration side. They're really focused on the data aspect and element too, and are really focused on real time and real-time reporting, and then real-time auditing as well, so that we can all get current. So I think those would be my three pieces of advice or opportunity and pitfall.
And I think I'm not speaking out of turn here if I was to say that tax departments, as a rule, are, let's say, risk averse. So what strategies do you recommend for tax professionals to find that balance between that need for technological innovation, not getting left behind, with that risk of over-reliance on new technologies? Anything you can share around them?
Yeah, it's a great one, because you're spot on. I think it's I don't know about risk aversion. I don't know. Whether I put us in that bucket or not. We may be classified that way, but I'm not sure I'd put us there. But you're spot on in that it's probably far more of a cultural shift or a human shift, and an acceptance, to be curious and to learn, and the adoption of that, and the in the management of that, and as it is a technology shift. I think so. So you're spot on. And so when you're going through that, you're at the end of the day, focused on transformation programs are all about the human. And we really have a ton of research around that really talk about that humans at the center approach. And unless you're taking a human-centered approach, you're 12 times more likely to fail. Like really, really focusing on that human aspect and element, and making sure that you're placing the human at the center of that adoption. And so, that would be my best piece of advice around that is, how are you training everyone? How are you making sure that they understand the why, it's important to adopt? What's the value associated with it? How are you taking them along that journey at whatever pace? We've got staff and seniors that jump right in, they're already adopting, they're way ahead, and then we have obviously some of our more experienced people that are more skeptical, as you say, are more risk adverse around it. And so you want to take it at their pace and do things that are value added to them in the way that they work. So that might be my advice on that piece.
Yeah, and apologies in advance if I did offend anyone in the tax departments for saying they're risk averse. No. And I think the main reason I suggested that is because there are so many new regulations and legislations that they have to follow. And in particular, two that spring to mind, BEPS 2.0, Inflation Reduction Act. So how do you envision the role of tax professionals evolving in the next decade? Because there's so much going on, isn't there, with that balance of technology, innovation, and regulation at the same time?
There is. And I think, honestly, that's why tax professionals love tax, right? They tend to be people who love change, right? Because the landscape, if you think there's 100 and, I'm going to say 150 plus countries, I'll just use that for purpose of this conversation. And the legislation is constantly changing. So 200 million plus, laws on the books that are changing constantly. And so you nailed it in the big one. So we obviously have BEPS, which is the rewrite of a bricks and mortars economy, right, to a digital economy ultimately. And then we have, IRA you mentioned, which is all about sustainability really and what we're focused on there. And so again, these are big topics that are real in our society and obviously our economy. And so new regulations and a new global landscape is coming forward around those. And so you're spot on. We're going to continue to see change. We're going to continue to see different economic cycles around those, and we're going to continue to see governments moving forward around those. And we're going to see technology evolve, again, in the way that all of that's deployed. So that's going to be sustainability, technology, supply chains, and these are big capital decisions that companies need to navigate, right, in making big strategic choices around it. So a lot of activity that tax departments are taking on, and how they serve as a strategic advisor ultimately to the C-suite around them. So you're spot on that collaboration between tax and finance functions and all the departments, sales, customers, operations are really, really important in navigating the landscape that keeps changing and will keep changing ultimately.
Yeah, and you're so right. You mentioned another word there, sustainability, something we're hearing more and more about, often in the same sense of AI, which is somewhat ironic considering the energy problem that AI has, but that's a topic for another day. But with so many companies, though, looking to ESG scores and ESG scores of the departments or even support partnerships they have with third parties, how are you, EY, preparing your tax professionals to adopt to this increasing emphasis on creating a fairer and greener world through tax policies? Because again, there's 5,000 miles between you and I, but it's conversations that we're seeing happening everywhere.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Look, we're a learning culture, as you can imagine, when you're in services and in public accounting. The foundation of what we do is all about learning and all about upskilling. And so we're lucky to have a world class learning organization and really get to focus on that. And so that future focused skills is one of the things we're really focused on, and sustainability certainly is one of them. And so as an example, last year we had 4 million learning hours, right, consumed globally by just our tax professionals, our 76,000 tax professionals. And so we have a master's actually in sustainability that we work with the whole business school around, and it's really designed to have future-focused practical skills and a transformative mindset around what it looks like to have long-term, sustainable, inclusive growth ultimately. And so that's a free degree for all of our EY people, regardless of rank or location. And that's really about, helping them gain that knowledge and the practical skills and experience they need, to create long-term value around sustainability. And so, those are the kinds of things we have. And then similarly, you talked about AI and technology, the same thing for AI and technology. We've had really technology for the last decade. So that starts when you're a staff, here at EY and EY Tax in particular. Because again, I was talking about how much data we work with and we deal with. What's really fun is obviously now we have AI in particular to apply to that. So we started last year it's called EY Tax Copilot. So it's probably 18 months ago now. It was actually before Microsoft Copilot had come out. And so we started an overall education enablement program to prepare our 76,000 professionals across the globe on low code and no code technologies powered by generative AI. So really jumping into that, obviously, even more so now with how quickly everything's advancing, certainly with ChatGPT and with Microsoft.
And I'm curious on that. We've mentioned the 76,000 people. You've talked about the teams. In what ways are you changing work or seeing changes in working preferences and technologies like Gen AI? And how are they influencing the way tax teams operate on a day-to-day basis and delivering their services? Because, again, I think a lot of people hear about the hype and what it might be able to do, but I'd love to just expand on what it's doing right now.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. So, if you think about think about any simple task you do. I mean, take things you do in, think of how many Word documents we produce. Think of how many Excel spreadsheets, we're working in, and how we, are obviously, maintaining, and there's lots of calculations inside of that. Think of how many PowerPoints, we obviously produce. And so what's amazing, I'll just take the simple desktop applications like that Microsoft has, and you think about having a Copilot. I'll use examples I do. I can do a simple outline in Word of a PowerPoint I'd like to have created, and then I obviously hand it over to Microsoft Copilot in PowerPoint and say, create a PowerPoint for me, and it'll create a first draft of that. So with images and obviously with an actual PowerPoint background that's EY standard, and so that's just from my thoughts typed into a Microsoft Word document, right? So just outlining what I want and what I want the framework of that to look like. And it gives me a first draft in PowerPoint. Same on my email. If I want to, everybody has a boss. And so, if I want to say, hey, sort my email by my boss, and then, on my way to work as I'm driving in, I want to have that read to me, that's what happens inside a Copilot. So some, really, really efficient things that we can do and have done for us by having a friend, a Copilot, right next to us as we work through our tasks. So, and many, many more. We have, we work a lot in, obviously with data. And so we have a lot that we do with, many of the advanced technologies and Copilots around data.
100% with you. It's great to hear stories like that. It really is, especially around working smarter, not harder. It's not about replacing people. It's that Copilot working seamlessly side by side. That's a message that often gets missed. Now, obviously, artificial intelligence is the hero of the hour. That's what gets all the attention, but it's only as good as the data we put in there. And companies have vast amounts of data right now. They're trying to find those hidden insights within it. So can you tell me a bit more about how you're seeing that relationship between AI and data and some of the results that you're seeing from that?
One of the things that we're seeing with data is taking that data and actually inserting what we call intelligent agents. So, think about a bot or, a really intelligent agent taking that information and then turning it, making suggestions, sort of nudging and making suggestions. And, you put that data, let's say it's cash flow data, and it's going to say, hey, if you did X, Y, and Z on your payables or your receivables, as an example, you'd be able to improve your cash flow by, X amount of days. Or, maybe it's data that's going to make suggestions about R&D incentives in certain countries, because again, it's it can see, you match it up with legislation. You have a global, sustainability tracks, green tax tracker, that's a tongue twister. But again, it matches that data up with like horizon scanning on legislation and makes suggestions, like really, we call it an intelligent agent because it's making really good suggestions. So again, those are things, it's vast amount of data, vast amount of legislation, globally and in many, many countries, and matching those two things up and producing extraordinary outcomes that weren't possible before.
And outside of the technology, I was doing a little research on you before you came on the podcast, and I know another area that you're passionate about is diversity and inclusiveness. So how do you ensure that these values are reflected in this huge team of yours? And what's your, especially around the EY's tax strategy and client services, etc.? Anything you can share around that? Because from what I was reading, it's something that's very important to you, right?
Yeah, it is. Look, I love working on high-performing teams. I love being on high-performing teams. And I think at the heart of that is having diverse teams and a really inclusive environment. And so, that's something I think we all as leaders or as partners, as employees, I think we have to model that. I think we have to reinforce that. I think we have to reward that. And I think that has everything to do with how you show up, every day, how we show up and work with our clients ultimately. And, I think that is, that's about bringing your best self to work and your whole self to work ultimately. And, being in an open and safe environment inside the four walls of EY. And then as we, take EY out to the world and to our clients and to our communities. And so, I think that's the thing that we're all really, really focused on at EY. We have this, we have a program, and then the way we think about is transformative leadership and purpose-driven leadership. And that's for everybody. That's not a leadership, that's not for a leader title. That is for, 400,000 people plus that are EY ultimately. And so that, that's really philosophy, from a philosophy perspective, the culture that we embrace and that we strive to create. We're not perfect, right? But that's certainly how we see it.
And just to dig a little bit deeper into that philosophy and maybe bring it to life for people listening around the world, are there any initiatives you can share that EY has implemented to maybe promote that authentic leadership development and build high-performing collaborative tech teams that embrace these values of diversity and inclusion, etc.? Is there anything you can share around that?
Yeah, I'm happy. Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. Look, there's really formal things, obviously, we do, like, certainly learning and development. Like we have an inclusive leadership for all program. So there's lots of things you can take and that certainly we take as a team. Like, again, the many teams I've been on, we actually take them together. So, we can talk about them and we can think about them. There was this great course I took when I was a senior. I've taken it a couple times. I took it as a senior manager, probably as a 10-year partner. It was about bias. And so it was whether you're conscious or unconscious and you have bias or, no biases. And of course, everybody has biases and everybody has unconscious biases. And, your goal ultimately is to get to consciousness and to get to awareness of your biases, because then you can do something with them. So that's one just great course I would just give as an example. We all have them. It's just that simple. And so it's becoming conscious about them and then obviously doing something with it. Another, really thing that I'm extraordinarily proud of, it's led by Karen Thornett, our global D&I officer, is our global social equity task force. And so this is something we've had, our chairman leads it now, will be Janet Troncalli, it had been Carmine DeCivio, but we've had a GSET for, as long as I've been with the firm, which is 30 plus years. And so which is extraordinary. And it is all about cohesive global actions to advance equity and inclusion. And really, we've been focused on social equity as of late. And so those are some extraordinary pieces of work. We focus on neurodiversity as well, a really unique set of skill sets. And we have an extraordinary couple of centers around the world that we get extraordinary outcomes from. So again, a lot of different examples, but I think they're just beautiful ways that you can see that inclusion and that bringing your best self to work. That's really inspiring. So, I love being in a culture and ultimately in an environment that looks like that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with me and taking the time to offer such candid, authentic insights into what goes on there at EY and how you're using technology and bringing so much of it to life and how it's actually solving real world problems right here, right now, not in the future. So I'm going to see if there's something we can do for you in return now, because some of the biggest names in business, VC funding and tech have either been guests or maybe just listened to this podcast. So is there a person that you'd love to have a private breakfast or lunch with? Because he or she might just hear this, but who would it be and why? Let's see what we can manifest together.
So I have some, you're going to laugh. I have a handful here. So I can do you.
Go for it. Yeah, we'll send it out there.
So I have personal ones, I have sports ones, and I have business ones. So let's see what we can do. So business wise, there are two people I obviously really, really admire and respect, and so Satya Nadella and Richard Branson, and obviously they're for many of the reasons they're both really, really diverse leaders. They're innovative leaders. They're daring leaders. They have beautiful cultures. They've made impact, and they both embrace AI, obviously. So those would be two that I would say on the business side. Kara Swisher. I think she's an extraordinary interviewer. She's curious. She's a great question asker. She's a tech czar. She's on my list. And then I'll give you two personal, I love sports. And I think somebody that's extraordinary at building high performing teams and producing outcomes is Mike Krzyzewski. And then last but not least, the girl of the hour, a brilliant business person, a brand power, a czar. She is kind and she's resilient, Taylor Swift. How about that?
Wow, you've shot for the moon there. I don't know if you've increased the chances.
Nothing less.
What a dinner party that would be. We need to make that happen.
Awesome? We can have so much fun.
Well, I'm going to just put that out into the ether. Let's see what we can manifest together here. But just make sure you don't forget my invite if we pull this one off. But,
don't you worry.
And for anyone listening, maybe they want to explore some of the topics we talked about today. Obviously, EY is a huge website. Would anywhere in particular you'd like to point at anyone or connect with you on LinkedIn, etc.? Where would you like everyone to go?
Yeah, thank you for that. And yes, I think LinkedIn is absolutely the best place, right, where we have tons of content. Obviously, I'm posting constantly on things I'm interested in, or obviously technology in particular. And then we obviously are just our EY company page, similarly with lots of depth and insights from across the firm. And so to see that, I actually recently spoke on our EY Tax and Law Focus podcast to discuss AI in particular. And we had guests from Microsoft join us as well. So I think lots of good stuff, from a podcast perspective that's out there too.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to ask your team to send me a link to that episode because maybe I can embed it in the blog post associated with this so people can check that out too. And I'll also include your LinkedIn and everything. And we covered so much today. And what I found most valuable is there's a lot of hype around AI, but businesses trying to work out what it means for them. And I just love how you've brought the world of accountancy and financial literacy to life today, talking about how tax professionals, yes, they're under pressure to invest in new technologies, especially generative AI, as more organizations push to be perceived as that forward-thinking and innovative company while achieving efficiency gains. And if that's not enough of a balance, we're also bringing in new regulations, new legislations. And I think just talking about these problems and challenges in an open forum and how AI can help with that is just priceless. So I'll be interested in what the listeners think, and maybe they can share some of their struggles and opportunities that they're experiencing too. But more than anything, Marna, just thank you for bringing this topic to life today and starting this conversation. Thank you.
My pleasure, Neil. Anytime.
I think it's clear that while AI brings exciting opportunities to the tax profession, it also demands careful consideration of the human element in technology adoption. And this is something that Marna has got covered here, so it was great to share that story. From the significance of an inclusive leadership to the strategic integration of new tools. For me, today's discussion sheds light on balancing innovation with practical implementation. But what are your thoughts on integrating AI into traditional fields like tax? Maybe you've got a different area that you work in, maybe legal. Do you have any effective examples of technology blending seamlessly with human oversight? Because I think AI on its own, humans on their own, that's nothing compared to what they bring to the table together. And these are the stories I want to share more of on the podcast. So please share your experience with me, whether it be a quick comment on socials at Neil C. Hughes, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, or if you want to send me an email or come on the podcast, have a little chat with me. Just email me techblogwriter@outlook.com, and together we'll continue to uncover how technology is not just supporting, but transforming entire professional landscapes. But that's it for today. I'm going to try and manifest that incredible dinner party that Marna suggested that Marna would like me to bring to life. That's a big challenge, but hey, I'm up for it. So thank you for listening today. Hopefully you'll join me again tomorrow. And until next time, don't be a stranger.